Hello and welcome to the Sony FE 16 to 35 millimeters f4 ZAOSS lens review for real estate. Let's start off with a question that you're here for. Does it work for real estate? If you're short on time, the answer is yes. Get this lens. It works for real estate photos. It works for real estate videos. It's my workhorse lens for real estate shoots. There are some caveats though, so if you have a little bit of time, let's go over those. Let's start with the pros. Pro number one, it has Zeiss Glass. It's one of the earlier Zeiss lenses, so maybe it doesn't quite have that sharpness and color rendition that you've grown to expect from, like, say, the Zeiss Bodice series. But it's still pretty sharp and the color rendition is still pretty good. You can get some cool looking lens flares just using this Zeiss Glass if you're into that stuff. Pro number two, the build. It's weather sealed, it's metal, it's rugged. I love that about it. And it's not an overly big or heavy lens. It weighs 518 grams or 18 ounces. The dimensions are 78 millimeters wide by 98 millimeters long, or 3 1/8 inch wide by 4 inches long. It's still under 5 inches total when it's fully extended. I didn't do the conversion into millimeters for that 5 inches part, I'm sorry. And it just fits on the Sony a7 III, or just on Sony full frame cameras in general. The Sony full frame cameras are pretty light, pretty compact. And the 2.8 version of this lens is amazing. It's sharp, it lets twice the amount of light in that this lens lets in, but it's big. It makes the lens front heavy. It feels like it's fighting with the lens. It just doesn't really match. This lens meshes with the Sony a7 III. Just feels good when you're carrying it. It gives you a nice, like, balanced setup. It feels like it was made for this camera. And the third pro, probably the reason you're here, the price. This lens came out in 2014. It's an old lens, and that means there's a good chance that you can find a used version or refurbished version of this lens that's well taken care of for a pretty solid discount. And the 2.8 version of this lens, the newer 16 to 35 f4 power zoom version of this lens, those lenses are both sharper than this lens. The 2.8, as I said, lets in twice the amount of light that this lens lets in. But those also cost $1,200 and $2,200, and because they're newer, there's no guarantee you're gonna find a good deal on a used version of those lenses. Full price, this Zeiss lens costs $1,000. Don't pay $1,000 for this lens. If you're spending that money, you might as well just pay the $1,400 for the newer version. It's sharper, it's a little bit better in low light. But you can consistently find this lens for $800 or lower, used or refurbished. And when you're saving $400, when you're saving $1,400, if you're on a budget like most of us are on, now this lens starts to become a little interesting. And now let's get to the cons of this lens. I only have one. It's a big one, the aperture. So let's address the elephant in the room. It's an f4 aperture, it's slow. And when you see f2.8 zoom lenses, f1.8 prime lenses, 1.4 prime lenses, 1.2 prime lenses, f4 just doesn't do it for me. There's just some things that faster lenses are better at. For example, dimly lit homes, getting shallow depth of field. If you're doing any kind of detail shots, any kind of business headshots during your shoot, you're not gonna get that shallow depth of field. Shooting at higher frame rates. When I was shooting with the f2.8, I could shoot at 120 frames per second. With this lens, I can't shoot with 120 frames per second, even in the best lit homes without introducing too much noise. I can still shoot at 60 frames per second. It still works, it's still slow motion technically. It just means that I need to go a little bit slower with my gimbal movements, a little bit smoother, maybe take a couple more takes for safety. Another way this comes into play, I shoot a lot of video, a lot of run and gun video. This is my run and gun, just like pop it on my camera and see what happens lens. Because I shoot video, I have this ND filter stuck to the front of my lens all the time. When I go indoors, I sometimes feel the need, I'm catching myself needing to unscrew that ND filter and sliding into my pocket, putting it up on a shelf and hoping I don't forget it or drop it or crack it, or it's a pain, and it might be the biggest pain of this lens. Again, maybe not a deal breaker considering the great price of this lens, but it's something that you do need concrete, definite workarounds to overcome. Now let's go over some gray area stuff. It might matter to you, it might not. One is the distortion. It does have a little bit of barrel distortion at 16 millimeters, which means it makes straight objects look a little bowed out like that. It has a little bit of pin cushioning going on when you punch into like 35 millimeters, which means it makes straight things bend inward like that. I don't even have examples of these to show you because I haven't been sitting inside of a lab shooting straight on photos of black and white grid lines. It's very slight and it's a one-click fix if you're using an app like Lightroom. If you're shooting video, it's a little bit more complicated of a fix. I don't even fix it in video. I think it looks fine. I don't really notice it. Second gray area, the paint. The paint comes off. It's a metal build. I like the metal a lot, but because it's metal, the paint is just gonna come off. It's not that like thick plasticky build that you're used to seeing in the newer lenses, and because of that, the paint's just not gonna stay on. It's just part of the lens. Nothing you can really do about it. Not a big deal to me, but if you're somebody who's constantly buying and trading and reselling your lenses, maybe that's something to keep in mind, that the metal will hopefully stay on. The paint will come off, and I don't know what that means for the value of the lens in the long term if you're trying to sell a lens that doesn't have any more paint. The third gray area, the OSS, the optical steady shot. I see a lot of reviews that are saying that they don't see the difference between a lens that has optical steady shot and the lens that doesn't, as long as their camera has in-body image stabilization, IBIS. For me personally, I've used this lens and I've used the f2.8 version of this lens, which does not have optical steady shot. And I do feel like the optical steady shot makes my shots a little bit smoother, and it's nothing defined or tangible that I can show you. But it feels like my gimbal movement, specifically the panning gimbal shot, is made a little bit less jittery with this lens that has the optical steady shot versus the 2.8 version, which is $1,400 more expensive, by the way, and does not have optical steady shot. This is also something that you can kind of hang your hat on and say it's an f4, but they kind of made an attempt to bridge that gap by adding the optical steady shot so that you could shoot at slower frame rates, especially in stills. And if you're going handheld, you could shoot at lower frame rates, allow more light in. It's there. It helps a little bit. Maybe it's like a tiny tiebreaker, but nothing huge. And that's it. In conclusion, it's not a perfect lens. There are big flaws in this lens, obvious flaws in this lens, I should say. And there are plenty of other alternatives to this lens for a wide angle real estate lens that I did way too much research to be able to cram into this video. But if you want to see that video, let me know in the comments. I'll absolutely make that video. In short, I feel that this Sony 16 to 35 millimeter f4 Zeiss lens is the best combination of value and versatility compared to all the other alternatives out there. Also, because it's such an old lens, all of the shortcomings of this lens are pretty well documented. I knew what I was getting into with this lens, and there weren't really any surprises in terms of shortcomings for this lens. I was able to see what I was getting into, understand that I could have workarounds for these shortcomings, and save some money, make this my go-to workhorse real estate lens. I like this lens. I would recommend it to somebody who's starting out in real estate. It's a great lens. It's been my workhorse. Thanks for watching.